Words can be a weapon or they can be a healing balm. The difference lies in the hands of the user. This quote is from Tong Uy Phu *, a book that isn't just about communication, but about the art of living amidst conflict. It doesn't teach you how to speak cunningly, but how to speak with humanity, how to navigate anger without harming anyone, including yourself. Its wisdom doesn't come from dry principles, but from subtle observations of life, where every single word can build or destroy, save or kill, connect or sever. In a world where sounds jostle for attention every second, people imagine that speaking faster, louder, will make them heard. But Salmon says the opposite. The true speaker isn't the one with many words, but the one with space for silence. It's in that space that emotions settle, wisdom ignites, and compassion finds its voice. Tong Uy Phu *. The name sounds like a martial art, but it's a discipline that uses not hands and feet, but heart and mouth. Not to strike others, but to transform conflict into understanding, to replace aggression with calm, to turn reactions into reflections of wisdom. Here, language is no longer just a tool, but a manifestation of one's true character. The weak speak to vent their anger, the strong speak to soothe it. The pages of this book are like a mirror. Every example, every piece of advice makes us pause to ask ourselves, how many times have I used my words like a blade instead of a gentle hand? How many times have I reacted too quickly, losing the chance to truly be understood? How many times has a relationship fallen into silence, all because of a single careless remark? Reading ** Tong Uy Phu is about understanding how we exist among others. It doesn't separate work from family, friends from strangers, because inherently, wherever there are people, there are interactions. And wherever there are interactions, kind words are needed. But the truly frightening thing isn't arguments. It's when we no longer want to speak at all. Because silence born of hurt is a slow, agonizing rupture. Tong Uy Phu helps us relearn how to speak not to win an argument, but to uphold our humanity. The book presents a peculiar paradox. To speak better, you must learn to be silent at the right moment. To be understood more, you must learn to listen sincerely in an age where everyone wants to broadcast their message, but few are willing to receive. Tong Uy Phu becomes a map guiding us back to something seemingly old-fashioned, listening. And perhaps the deepest insight this book offers isn't about how to cope, but how to truly understand. For if our words don't lighten anyone's burden, what is the point of speaking? If our words only serve to prove us right, without making the world a little gentler, is it truly worth it? So, before embarking on this journey, perhaps the question isn't how to speak more eloquently, but whether we can learn to speak in a way that heals, while still preserving our own strength and integrity. Sometimes, just a single word, a fleeting glance, is enough to turn a peaceful day into a raging storm. In such moments, people often act instinctively, either striking back to protect their ego or sinking into resentful silence. Both lead to self-defeat. Tong Uy Phu was born from moments like these when we realize that what truly matters isn't what others say, but how we choose to respond. That year, I organized a small training session on communication skills at the University of Hawaii. Just a few hours into the class, a middle-aged man approached me. His face was weary, his eyes red from lack of sleep. He said, "I'm a real estate agent. Every day I face arrogant, demanding, and impatient clients. I came here to learn how to shut them up." I smiled. "You've come to the right place, but perhaps with the wrong goal. I don't teach you how to silence others. I teach you how to prevent their words from harming *you." He fell silent, then nodded slightly. "So, this is verbal martial arts," he mused. We both laughed. The name * Tong Uy Phu began in that moment. The purpose of * Tong Uy Phu isn't to win with words, but to transform language into a sophisticated defensive tool. Kung Fu trains the body to neutralize physical attacks. Tong Uy Phu trains the mind to disarm verbal assaults. It teaches us to remain calm in the eye of the storm, to speak at the right time, to stay silent at the right moment, and to preserve our compassion even when under attack. A woman once told me a story about her elderly, frail mother who lived in a nursing home. Every visit, the daughter would be bombarded with complaints. "This room is too stuffy, no one cares about me, everything is just awful." Initially, the daughter just wanted to leave. But then one day, she paused and asked herself, "If I were mother, lying here 18 hours a day, next to a stranger who keeps the TV on constantly, would I still be able to remain gentle?" Her anger melted away. Instead of reacting, she listened. She sat with her mother longer, not to speak, but simply to be present. And a strange thing happened. Her mother stopped complaining. That silent understanding was the softest counterattack in the martial art of words. Many believe empathy is a weakness. I think the opposite. Empathy is the highest form of strength, for it demands that we step away from the center of our ego. When someone yells in your face, they are brandishing a sword. But if you remain calm enough to ask, "What is this person afraid of?" then you have disarmed their attack before it even touches you. A hotel employee once told me an incredible story. Early one morning, a young couple, soaked to the bone, walked up to the reception desk demanding immediate check-in. The hotel was fully booked and no rooms were ready. He explained gently, but the man shouted, "We just endured 36 hours of flying. We're on our honeymoon and you're telling me there's no room?" Before the employee could react, he recalled a principle from the course. What would I feel if I were them? He looked at their deeply shadowed eyes, recognizing exhaustion, not rudeness. He smiled, offered them hot coffee, and opened a temporary room for them to rest and shower. By the afternoon, the couple returned and handed him a handwritten thank you card. In just one moment of understanding, both sides won. Tong Uy Phu doesn't teach us to avoid conflict, but to walk through it with dignity. People often think they must win an argument. But what's the point of winning if your heart has lost? Winning by hurting someone else is like cutting your own hand with a knife just to prove its sharpness. True strength lies in the ability to keep your mind calm amidst chaos. A girl working at a movie ticket counter once faced a long line of agitated customers. The movie was about to start, and she felt like screaming. She reminded herself that they just wanted a few minutes of joy, and if she got angry, her whole day would be ruined. So she offered a genuine smile, spoke slowly. Each person was served, and she finished her shift feeling whole. The strange thing is, when we choose to be calm, the world suddenly softens. When we are silent at the right time, others begin to listen. When we truly listen, others begin to calm down. And when we stop wanting to win, that's when we achieve the greatest victory over our own impulse for retaliation. On quiet evenings, I often recall my father's words. You can be right or you can be happy, but you rarely can be both. Happiness doesn't lie in the retort, but in the power to choose silence, to understand, and to avoid being drawn in. There will be days when it feels like everyone around you is testing your patience. Complainers, critics. Everyone carries a handful of fire, ready to throw it at you. But when you understand that fire only flares if you give it oxygen, you'll learn how to let that flame extinguish itself. Someone once asked me, if someone keeps complaining, how do you make them stop? I replied, don't try to silence them. Instead, starve the fire of its oxygen. That means don't argue, don't deny, do the opposite. Acknowledge the part of them that hurts. When someone laments, everything is terrible, you can say, it sounds like today hasn't been easy for you, has it? Just that simple acknowledgement makes them feel less opposed. People want to be recognized, not fixed. I remember a student who came to me after a training session. He said, I work in customer service. Every day, dozens of people call just to yell. He tried to explain himself, but the more he spoke, the louder they got. I told him to try changing a small detail, start the call by echoing their frustration. A few weeks later, he returned with a subtle smile. It's miraculous, he said. I don't need to reason with them, I just say, I understand why you're angry, and most of them lower their voices immediately. That's the art of engagement instead of reaction. When we reflect another's emotions, they no longer feel the need to be defensive, and only then can reason enter the conversation. Argument is a ladder with no rungs. The more you climb, the more exhausted you become. If you step off it, the other person cannot continue alone. I once met a middle-aged woman at a workshop who said, I can't stand it when someone is wrong but speaks as if they're right. I have to tell them the truth. I asked her how she felt after doing that each time. She sighed, exhausted. I smiled, understanding she was battling someone else's ego battle with no end. Sometimes, letting go of the need to be right is the only way to be truly right. Practitioners of verbal martial arts understand that every confrontation has two sides, their words and your reaction. You cannot control them, but you always control yourself. Just as in martial arts, a wise person doesn't block a blow with sheer force, but redirects its energy into empty space. If someone says, you never do anything right, you can calmly respond, could you elaborate on what specifically disappoints you? Just like that, you've transformed a spear into a question. The attacker is forced to pause and think. At that moment, the initiative belongs to you. I once witnessed a tense meeting where two employees were arguing about a project error. One blamed, the other defended. Their voices grew louder, their eyes flashing. I stepped in, not to assign blame, but simply to ask, are we trying to find someone to hold accountable, or are we trying to find a way to prevent this from happening again? The room fell silent. With one question, the combative atmosphere transformed into one of cooperation. That was a moment I clearly saw the power of directed language. It doesn't fight, it guides. There's a rule I often repeat: don't play the angry person's game. Set your own rules. People can drag you into their spiral, or you can draw them into your orbit where there is order, calmness, and respect. A teacher recounted, I had a student who always disrupted the class. If I yelled, he'd just laugh it off. One day, instead of getting angry, I sat down at his eye level and softly said, you must be really tired today, aren't you? The boy fell silent. I asked if he wanted to talk privately from then on. He stopped causing trouble. This quiet understanding, this soft power, sometimes compels even the loudest person to calm down. You'll be surprised to see, the less you resist, the stronger you become. Because strength doesn't lie in making others fear you, but in making them realize their anger cannot harm you. An angry person always wants to spread their anger. If you don't receive it, it simply falls to the ground. Someone asked me, so are we just supposed to be submissive? I said, no, we just need to choose which battles are worth fighting. Not every confrontation deserves your energy, time, and peace of mind. There are times when winning in silence is more noble than losing in noise. Have you ever regretted words you've spoken, but never regretted words you held back? People often assume that to control a situation, they must speak. But in reality, true power lies in the ability to be silent at the right moment. I recall once standing in a tense meeting, the manager slamming his fist on the table, his voice echoing through the room. Who is responsible for this failure? All eyes turned to me. I could have justified, retaliated, done everything to defend myself. But I simply said, can we discuss how to fix this before we assign blame? A question instead of a reaction, and the room's tension suddenly softened. When you don't react, you don't fuel the chaos. Deliberate silence is like a still pond. Whoever throws a stone only sees their own reflection. The one who knows when to be silent is the one who holds the initiative. Silence is not weakness. It is choosing the opportune moment to speak what truly matters. I once met a woman who, after years of working in high-pressure environments, told me, I learned one thing. When someone is losing control, the wisest response is to remain silent until they run out of steam. Then she laughed. And only then do I say things they can actually hear. That's the skill I call the golden pause, the moment we stop between reflex and choice. Every conversation has two currents, hot and cold. If we can choose the cold current in time, the storm will dissipate. But we don't always know what to say. There are moments when words escape us, leaving only awkwardness and fumbling. The inexperienced will try to fill the void with talk, but the seasoned understand that silence also has its own sound, the sound of presence. I once encountered a young employee who had made a serious mistake. Standing before me, speechless, he hung his head, trembling, waiting to be reprimanded. I simply asked, what have you learned from this? He looked up, eyes red-rimmed, and whispered that he never wanted to make that mistake again. I didn't need to say more. Sometimes, a gentle question is more profound than 1,000 lectures. Humans are masters at assigning blame, yet so weak when it comes to accepting responsibility. We blame circumstances, others, fate, time, anything to avoid looking in our own mirror. Yet only when we stop searching for someone to blame do we find solutions. Tong Uy Phu doesn't advocate blind tolerance. It teaches us to face reality with an active mindset. When something bad happens, the first question shouldn't be, who is at fault? But what can we do now? Shift the question, and the entire energy of the situation changes. I once witnessed a team of employees make a significant error in an advertising campaign, causing substantial financial loss to the company. Instead of interrogating them, the director asked, what have we learned from this failure? The entire team fell silent. Then one person spoke up, saying, next time we'll double-check everything. From that moment, blame transformed into a lesson, and the company never repeated that mistake. That is the art of shifting focus from blame to creation. Verbal martial arts doesn't end with the mouth, it begins with the heart. When the heart is at peace, words naturally become clear. When the heart is deceitful, words are merely arrows aimed back at oneself. A true martial artist knows that the strongest blow isn't one that strikes, but one that doesn't need to be struck. Similarly, the most powerful words are those that don't need to be spoken, yet still change another's attitude. Once a boy in my class asked, "How can you speak calmly to someone who always tries to insult you?" I told him, "Because I understand they're not truly insulting me, they're just trying to escape their own anger." When you understand the root cause of rudeness, it no longer hurts you. And when you're no longer hurt, you can choose to respond with wisdom. This world isn't short on speakers, only on listeners. But a true listener isn't someone who is silently meaningless. It's someone who holds space for others to see themselves. If you've ever made someone pause in their anger with just a calm gaze, then you already know that martial art. Everything in verbal martial arts boils down to one point: master yourself before you try to change others. A skilled communicator isn't someone who always wins an argument, but someone who inspires others to seek solutions with them. When you pause, breathe, and choose your words at the right moment, the world around you begins to breathe slower too. One autumn morning, I saw two old friends arguing outside a cafe. One, red-faced and trembling, said, "You always think you're right." The other retorted, "Because I am right?" No one won, only a long silence followed. In life, perhaps what truly hurts us isn't others' mistakes, but our obsession with proving ourselves right. Don't strive to be right. Strive to understand. That is the first principle of verbal martial arts on this journey. When someone contradicts you, instinct urges you to prove, argue, counterattack. But all arguments, no matter how sharp, are meaningless if the other person is defensive. An angry person doesn't listen with their ears, they listen with their wounds. Therefore, acknowledging their emotions is the only way to reopen the door to reason. I remember a woman who came to me after a training session. She said, "You don't understand. I can't stand it when my husband tells me I'm exaggerating everything." I asked, "And what do you usually say when he says that?" She replied, "I tell him, you never listen to me." I smiled. "And what does he do?" She gave a sad laugh. "He just goes silent." I told her, "You are both saying something true, just in the wrong way. If instead of 'you never listen,' you said, 'I know you're tired, but I really need you to listen for just 5 minutes,' the conversation would be different." When you acknowledge a part of the other person's truth, you don't become weaker. You open a door for them to approach. Over many years of training, I've seen the same rule repeated. Argument is fire, and acknowledgement is water. You can extinguish fire with water, but not with more fire. A wise person doesn't scramble for more arguments, they find a way to make others want to listen. Guide instead of criticize. When we criticize, listeners recoil. When we guide, they open up. Two different outcomes, all from a small change in language. A manager once told me, "I'm tired of repeatedly reminding my employees about the same mistake." I asked, "How do you usually say it?" He replied, "Why did you make that mistake again?" I told him, "That's precisely why." The question, why, doesn't invite thought, it triggers defensiveness. But if you say, "Next time, what other approach could we try?" you are guiding, not judging. People don't want to be lectured, they want to be led. When you tell someone, "You should do it this way," they hear, "You are wrong." But when you say, "Could we try this?" they hear, "We are moving forward together." The same idea, but the choice of words determines the outcome. I once made that mistake. On a project, I told a colleague, "You must submit the report before Friday." He replied dryly, "Okay." The report was 2 days late. The next time I changed my approach. "Could you help me complete the report before Friday?" "We need it to prepare for the meeting." He said, "Certainly, I'll arrange it." It wasn't that the sentence was better, it was that it respected the listener's agency. There's a paradox in communication. The more you try to fix others, the more they resist. The more you give them a chance to self-correct, the more they want to change. Guiding is the art of inspiring others to willingly move towards something better. In the office, in the family, on the street where small conflicts occur, daily language becomes either a knife or a flower, depending on how we wield it. You can brandish it to win or lift it to illuminate. A child breaks a glass. If we scold, "You're so clumsy," the child learns fear. If we say, "Next time, be more careful, Mommy believes you can do it," they learn confidence. Words can make others retract or reach out. Don't confuse forgiveness with agreement. When you choose to understand instead of argue, to guide instead of criticize, you're not compromising. You are choosing a less combative but ultimately more effective path. Hot-tempered people often think they need to speak forcefully to control others. In reality, true control lies in the ability to make others want to adjust themselves. How many times have you heard a gentle criticism that you remembered long after? Because deep down, we all want someone to understand us correctly. When our mistakes are pointed out with respect, we feel valued, and when we feel respected, people change faster than under any command. Kind language doesn't weaken us, it simply makes us strong enough not to need to attack. Once at a workshop, I asked the entire audience, "Among you, has anyone ever been ordered to do something and still felt happy?" Not a single hand went up. I then asked, "And who among you has ever been asked for help and felt more willing?" Nearly everyone smiled and nodded. I simply said, "That's the difference between a command and an invitation." Asking for help instead of ordering is one of the softest, yet most powerful, moves in verbal martial arts. People imagine that to be respected, one must speak strongly, but the truth is the opposite. It's when you know how to use gentle words that others listen to you most deeply. A request cloaked in respect always carries more weight than a shout. I remember a traffic police officer in San Francisco once told me that he realized the effectiveness of words was greater than any ticket. Instead of yelling at people for parking illegally, he said, "Sir, I know you're in a hurry today, but this is an emergency exit. Could you help me keep the lane clear?" 9 out of 10 people apologized and drove away immediately. But when he yelled, they argued back. Words carry the speaker's energy. If you speak from imposition, it meets resistance. If you speak from respect, it touches their sense of self-responsibility. Someone asked me, "But if I'm the boss, I have the right to give orders, don't I?" I said, "You have the right, but right doesn't always mean effective." A truly good boss doesn't give orders to be obeyed, they speak to foster cooperation. So instead of "submit the report by this afternoon," they say, "We need the report by this afternoon so the whole team can present it. Could you help me with that?" And the work gets done without shouting. When language shifts from command to invitation, people shift from reluctance to willingness. Then I asked the audience, "Has anyone ever asked their child to clean their room?" Laughter erupted throughout the hall. A woman raised her hand and said, "I yell and my child still doesn't do it." I asked, "What if you tried saying it differently?" She thought for a moment and replied, "What if I said, 'If you help me clean your room, it would make Mom feel less tired'?" I smiled. "Exactly. And remember to add a thank you even before they do it." Perhaps nothing softens a person more than the feeling of being trusted. Self-respect is the doorway to all behavior, and an invitation is the key to shifting perspective. Eliminate "I can't because" from your vocabulary, for that phrase is a subtle handcuff that locks the mind. When we say, "I can't because," we close off all exits, positioning ourselves as victims. Yet, by changing just one word, the world transforms. "I can if." This may sound small, but it's a fundamental reclaiming of agency. I once trained a group of employees at an insurance company. When I asked why clients hadn't been called back, the team leader replied, "We can't because we're short-staffed." I said, "Try saying that sentence again." He looked puzzled. "We can if we hire one more person or redistribute the schedule." The whole room laughed, but everyone understood that in just 1 second, his tone had shifted from heavy to proactive. Language shapes our stance. When we change our words, we change how we stand in life. A single mother once told me that she often said, "I can't make time for myself because I'm busy with my children." I suggested, "Try saying, 'I can if I can manage 10 minutes each morning.'" She laughed. "It sounds so light, but it's true, I did it." Every time we add the word "if," we open the door to possibility. But when we say "because," we only find reasons to remain stagnant. People often believe words are just sounds, but in reality, they are instructions to the mind. Say, "I can't," and you won't find a way. Say, "I can," and your brain starts working to prove it. This isn't positive illusion, it's a genuine cognitive mechanism. Language is a map, and the mind follows that map. Over many years of teaching, I've realized people don't fail due to lack of ability. They fail because they believe, "I can't." When you replace that belief with the question, "How can I?" all doors will open. Remember, a question has more power than an affirmation. "I can't" ends a conversation. "How can I?" begins a new journey. I often tell my students, practice listening to what you say to yourself, because the words you speak are the life you live. If every day you say, I'm tired, you will feel more tired. If you say, I will try, your energy will already be different. Every word is a seed. What you sow, you shall reap. Tomorrow, when someone asks you for something, try asking it as a favor. And when you hesitate, try saying, I can if. You'll find that not only the outcome changes, but you yourself change. I once met a young man in a course, his face tense, his voice heavy as if carrying the weight of the world. He said, everything is always a problem for me. My boss is a problem, my colleagues are a problem, even my family is a problem. I asked, and why do you think everything becomes a problem? He was silent for a moment, then replied, because I think of them as problems. That's when I told him about the principle of becoming non-problematic, not avoiding issues, but viewing situations without judgment. Every time we label something a problem, we give it control over our emotions. But when we see it simply as a situation that needs handling, the mind seeks a way out instead of digging a deeper hole. Remember, difficulties don't become heavier on their own. We attach that weight by recounting them with a complaining tone. Late again, traffic again, another terrible day. Those sentences don't change reality, they only exhaust us more. The experienced understand that maintaining a neutral tone is a form of emotional discipline. Saying, the road is busy, is vastly different from this horrible traffic. Same phenomenon, two attitudes toward life. I once saw a young manager apply this principle in his company. When the team encountered a technical issue, everyone panicked. Instead of yelling, he said, okay, what's working and what isn't? Just a simple question, no blame, no drama. The whole team immediately refocused on finding solutions. When you don't make a big deal out of something, others learn from you and scale it down. That's how calmness spreads. Being non-problematic doesn't mean being indifferent. It means choosing to focus on the direction, not the obstacle. People often think positivity means forced cheerfulness, but true positivity is looking directly at reality without breaking, without exaggerating, without downplaying, just seeing clearly and moving forward. And to maintain that balance, one must learn one more thing: avoid extremes in language. Words like always, never, all, completely are dynamite in communication. They turn statements into accusations and listeners into defendants. You always arrive late. You never listen to me. Such sentences slam shut every door to understanding, because as soon as they hear them, people immediately think of a time they didn't do that. And so, the conversation shifts from emotions to rebuttal. A woman told me that her husband often said, you always nag. She would react with, no, I don't always. And so they argued about frequency, no longer about feelings. I told her, if he had said, lately you've been complaining a lot and it makes me tired, you would react differently, wouldn't you? She nodded. When we are specific, we calm things down. When we generalize, we ignite them. In class, I often ask students to try changing an extreme statement into a factual description. You always drive me crazy becomes, when you speak so loudly, I feel stressed. Just a small change, but the anger in the air is halved because emotions, when accurately described, naturally dissipate. The more precise the language, the shorter the conflict. We live in an era where everyone overstates everything: social media, television, meetings. Everywhere it's terrible, awful, excellent, superb. Because of this, normalcy has become a luxury. Someone who speaks slowly, uses simple words, and avoids extremes suddenly stands out in a crowd. Regulating your language is about preserving dignity in a noisy age. On another occasion, I was invited to train a customer service team. They often faced harsh words from customers. I taught them just one thing: don't reflect the other person's intensity, reflect only the content. If a customer says, your service is terrible, respond with, I'm very sorry you're disappointed. I want to understand what exactly makes you feel this way. Just like that, the conversation pivots back to a solution. Maintaining neutral language isn't about being submissive, it's about leading. A master of words doesn't need many sentences. They just need the right tone that is not defensive, not extreme, like a rock amidst waves. Waves can crash endlessly, but the shore remains unchanged. And in the end, I realized that all these skills: acknowledgement, guidance, inviting, opening possibilities, avoiding problems, steering clear of extremes, all lead to one destination: speaking to connect, not to win. Language isn't just a communication tool, it's how we present ourselves in the world. When you speak less, choose words more precisely, avoid exaggeration, and aren't defensive, the world around you slowly changes. You'll see others become calmer because you were calm first. Verbal martial arts doesn't teach us to speak eloquently, it teaches us to live kindly. And if there's one thing I want readers to remember after all this, it's that kind words are not a facade, but a strategy of courage. Because only the brave are calm enough to be gentle. People often think speaking is power. But in reality, true power lies in the ability to listen. In communication, everyone wants to be understood, but very few are willing to listen to understand. Most of us only listen to respond. We wait for others to stop speaking, not to comprehend them, but for our turn to speak. I once witnessed a small scene in class that I'll never forget. A young woman was talking about being disrespected by her colleagues. She recounted, her voice trembling, eyes welling up, when a man sitting nearby interrupted her. "Don't be so sensitive, they probably didn't mean anything by it." And in that instant, the girl's face froze, she said nothing more. I looked at the man and said, "You just extinguished a flame, but it was a flame that needed to be warmed, not put out." Active listening means giving others the right to fully express their emotions. It's not mere silence, but complete presence. An active listener doesn't interrupt, doesn't judge, doesn't try to fix, they simply reflect what they truly understand. Sometimes a sentence like, "I hear you're feeling very disappointed," can calm someone's inner storm. Reflecting emotions is our way of saying, "I am here and I am listening." In communication, there are two layers, information and emotion. An average person only hears the information layer, they hear what happened. An empathetic person hears the emotional layer, they hear how that situation made the other person feel. When you reflect the correct emotional layer, you're not just listening, you're healing. Someone asked me, "But what if the other person says rude things?" I replied, "Then you need to listen even more deeply, because harsh words are merely the outer layer of a deeper wound." Dealing with rude behavior is an art of inner discipline. We don't reflect the intensity, we only reflect the content. A rude person wants to drag you down to their energy level. If you retaliate, you've lost. But if you maintain a neutral, calm, and clear tone, they will gradually weaken. I once met a front desk employee at a small hotel. That day, a guest stormed in, angrily shouting because his room wasn't ready. Everyone was tense, but the receptionist simply said, "I understand you're upset about the wait. Let me check for you right away." Her voice was not defensive, not fearful. That single sentence silenced the man. A few minutes later, as she handed him the key, he softly said, "I apologize for losing my temper." I asked her about it afterward, and she smiled. "I just thought, if I get angry back, who will ever end this?" Maintaining a neutral tone is a form of power. It's like still water reflecting waves without being carried away. A hot-tempered person often just needs someone not to add more fuel, and they will extinguish themselves. One rule I always remember: separate the person from the behavior. A rude person isn't always bad. Sometimes they are just afraid or tired or feel disrespected. If we only see the behavior, we will react. If we see the person behind the behavior, we will understand. A student once asked me, "What if someone insults me directly?" I said, "Let their words fall to the ground before you pick them up." Not every statement deserves our reaction. You don't need to win every argument. Sometimes, you just need to preserve your dignity. I remember a young manager in a meeting who was severely reprimanded by a senior boss in front of many colleagues. Instead of reacting, he simply said, "I understand your point, and I will review it to make the necessary adjustments." The meeting ended in silence. Afterward, the boss sought him out and said, "Thank you for not making me lose face." Just one act of calmness transformed the relationship from confrontation to respect. When you don't react, you give others a chance to reflect on themselves. The important thing isn't how much we hear, but how much safety we convey so that others dare to open up. A master of verbal martial arts isn't someone who speaks well, but someone who makes others speak their truth. And to do that, you must learn to listen with your heart, listening not just with your ears, but with your eyes, with your presence, with the silence between two sentences. Sometimes, silence at the right moment is the most subtle answer. One afternoon years ago, I sat in a small cafe watching two close friends argue. Their voices grew louder and louder, a tiny matter, a teasing remark, escalating into a gaping rift. Neither would yield. I vividly remember the moment one person stood up and said loudly, "All right, you win," and walked out, leaving behind a thick, suffocating silence. It was then I realized that in every conflict, no one truly wins. De-escalating conflict doesn't begin with cleverness, but with a slow breath. People can only hear each other when they stop shouting. To calm a confrontation, we must know how to lower the tempo, just as a musician softens a frantic piece of music. I often teach students a simple yet effective four-step process. First step, acknowledge the emotion. When someone is angry, don't rush to correct their reasoning. Just say, I know this situation is frustrating for you. Acknowledging doesn't mean agreeing, it means creating space for the other person to feel seen and heard. Second step, narrow the scope of the problem. Don't let the conversation sprawl into the past or future. Ask, right now, what is bothering you the most? When you narrow it down, you reduce the energy of the anger. Third step, ask solution-oriented questions. So, what could make you feel better about this? This question redirects the brain away from defense and toward action. Final step, agree on the next small step. Don't expect to resolve everything in one conversation. Even a small step forward is enough to de-escalate. Conflict is misdirected energy. When you redirect it, it becomes cooperation. I once witnessed a mother and her teenage daughter arguing fiercely over a phone. The mother shouted, "You're addicted to that phone, it's driving me crazy." The girl retorted, "You always judge me." And then both fell silent, tears falling. The mother turned to me, sighing, "I don't know how to talk to my child anymore." I gently suggested, "Try reframing it as a question." She turned to her daughter. "I don't understand why you like your phone so much. Can you tell me?" The girl was silent for a moment, then said, "Because all my friends talk on it, Mom." The conversation had shifted. When a person is asked instead of judged, they revert to being a human being, no longer a defensive combatant. Maintaining an open mind is the foundation for all skills in verbal martial arts. Without an open mind, there is no learning. Without learning, there is only the repetition of the past. We react not to the present, but to the memories of past experiences. Therefore, to truly listen, we must take off our old glasses. Those with an open mind do not rush to conclusions. They know how to pause between "I think" and "I know." Wisdom lies not in the answer, but in the ability to tolerate the unknown. I remember a boss once told an employee, "You're always late because you're lazy." The employee remained silent. Later, he sent his boss a doctor's note for a mild heart condition. The boss recounted to me, "That was the most shameful lesson I ever learned. I thought I understood, but it turned out I was just guessing." An open mind isn't an innate trait, it's a disciplined habit. Whenever your mind rushes to label, ask yourself, "Do I have enough facts yet?" Or, could the opposite also be true? These two questions are a cooling balm for cognitive arrogance. A mature communicator understands that every situation has two sides, and within what they don't yet understand, there is always a part of the other person's truth. You might not agree, but you can still listen. You can maintain your perspective without closing the door to dialogue. Keeping an open mind is keeping the ability to connect. I once met a married couple in a training session. They said they couldn't talk to each other anymore. When I asked why, they explained, "Because every time we spoke, we were just waiting for our turn to rebut." So, I asked them to try a simple principle. After the first person finished speaking, the second person could only reflect back one sentence. Initially, they were clumsy, but then their eyes began to change. The husband said, "I understand now." "You don't need me to fix you, you need me to listen." The wife teared up. When we truly listen, the world can change without needing another explanation. De-escalating conflict and keeping an open mind are two sides of the same mirror. One calms, the other clarifies. When combined, we not only speak more skillfully, but live more deeply. An old taxi driver in Waikiki once told me a story he remembered his whole life. Whenever he picked up a passenger, he'd always ask, "Which way would you like to go? Along the coast or the shortcut through the city?" Most passengers chose the scenic coastal route, even if it was a few minutes slower. He smiled. People don't just want to get there, they want to choose the path. That simple, insightful remark is a reminder that when you share control, you don't become weaker. You make others a part of the journey. In every relationship work, family, or even a fleeting conversation, everyone carries a deep need to be heard, respected, and to have a voice. And that is the root of the art of sharing control. No one wants to be ordered, but everyone wants to participate. If you let others feel they are co-creating the outcome with you, they will give their all. I once advised a team leader at an advertising company. He complained that his employees lacked responsibility and worked half-heartedly. I asked him, "How do you usually assign tasks?" He said, "I tell them what to do and when to finish." I replied, then you're driving the car alone. Next week, I suggested, try a different approach. Call the whole team together and say, here's the goal. In your opinion, what's the fastest way to achieve it? They discussed, debated, and then divided the work themselves. As a result, the campaign was completed ahead of schedule. He told me, I only changed one thing, I let them choose the path. Control isn't lost when we share it, it multiplies. Because when people are trusted, they want to prove that trust is deserved. Sharing control isn't about loosening the reins, it's about creating a flexible framework. Give others choices within reasonable limits. For example, instead of saying, you must finish this by Friday, ask, would Thursday or Friday be better for you? Same destination, but the first way makes the listener feel forced, while the second makes them feel respected. The difference lies in letting them hold a part of the key. I once saw a teacher handle a difficult student using this very principle. The boy was always disruptive, constantly arguing. One day, instead of scolding, the teacher asked, do you want to work in a group today or by yourself? The boy replied, in a group. The whole class was surprised. The teacher simply smiled, okay, choose your group, but remember to keep order. The boy behaved well throughout the lesson. Given the power to choose, people naturally gravitate towards the right thing. In negotiations, sharing control is also a way to erase the us versus them boundary. Instead of saying, I want, or you need, use we. We are looking for the most effective solution. That sentence transforms a confrontational stance into a cooperative one. From opposing sides, we move in the same direction. There's a secret I always remind my students. Give others the feeling of winning without anyone having to lose. This doesn't mean being disingenuous, it means prioritizing the common good over the need to be right or wrong. Sometimes, saying, you have a point, doesn't diminish you. It simply opens a path for both of you to move forward. A mature communicator understands that absolute control is an illusion. The tighter you try to grip, the more a relationship strains. But when you know how to loosen your hold and give a little, you gain trust in return. Trust is the most enduring form of power. I remember a husband once shared that after 10 years of marriage, he and his wife still argued over trivial matters. Until one day, he changed how he spoke. Instead of, you have to understand me, he said, can we find a way to understand each other better? He told me, I only changed one word. But my marriage changed completely from command to invitation, from coercion to partnership. That is the only way to sustain a long-term relationship. Sharing control is also a lesson in humility. It requires us to believe that we don't always have the best answers. It compels us to trust in the wisdom of the collective, in the capabilities of others. And when we trust others to grow, that is the cycle of maturity. At this point, we realize a profound truth. Every technique in verbal martial arts leads back to the same core principle, knowing how to maintain inner peace to see the human in others. Listening, understanding, de-escalating, sharing all are not just about speaking skillfully, but about living rightly. In this noisy world, those who maintain a calm voice, an open heart, and respect will become anchors for those around them. You don't need power to exert influence, you only need a peaceful presence. When you speak with respect, your words travel beyond language, and that is the greatest spirit of connection, cooperation, instead of confrontation. When you understand that the other person is not an enemy, but a mirror reflecting yourself, every conflict becomes an opportunity to learn about compassion. Humans can argue about everything, from how to peel an apple to how to define happiness. But that doesn't mean we should engage in every argument. There are battles where, even if you win, you still lose. Choosing which battles are worth fighting is an art of mindfulness, knowing when silence is more powerful than words. Sometimes you encounter someone attacking you with sarcasm. You could easily retort, just one witty comeback, and you'd strike them down. But in that moment, you also lose your own peace. So before reacting, ask yourself, is this truly worth sacrificing my peace of mind and time? Those who know how to choose their battles aren't weak. They understand that their energy is finite. Some conflicts exist only to prove who is right, but no one ends up happier. Sometimes, losing an argument is winning a peaceful life. A businessman once told me that he used to retaliate against complaining customers, believing it protected his honor. But then he realized he lost more customers than he preserved his pride. Later, he learned to listen to complaints as a gift. When someone criticized, he would ask, if you were me, how would you do things differently? just one non-defensive question transformed an adversary into a consultant. You don't need to win with logic. You just need to maintain your composure. Once you know how to choose your battles, you must learn the second step, saying no. These two words are short but weigh 1,000 pounds, for they define the boundary between you and the world. Most people fear refusal because they're afraid of offending, being disliked, or being seen as selfish. But in reality, a timely no is the highest way to maintain integrity with yourself. Refusal isn't about rejecting others, it's about protecting your inner honesty. Instead of saying, I can't, say, I want to do this well, and to do that, I need to decline that other task. The wording is different, but the message remains the same. I respect both you and myself. A mother once shared that she always agreed to help her neighbors to the point of exhaustion. One day, she tried saying, I'd really love to help, but today I need to dedicate time to my children. Her neighbor nodded, not at all angry. She told me, I realized the world didn't collapse when I said no. Refusing doesn't diminish you, it makes you more authentic. Learning to say no is learning to take responsibility for your own life. If you don't say no, others will say yes for you in the way they want. Sometimes you don't need to shout, just smile and say, thank you, but I can't. That sentence, when spoken with a calm demeanor, is a declaration of self-respect. And once you've learned to say no, you need to know how to withdraw gracefully. Not every conversation needs a conclusion. Sometimes, the greatest value of a discussion is knowing when to stop. Withdrawing gracefully isn't losing, it's choosing peace over ego. An employee at a company recounted how he used to argue with his boss to defend his viewpoint, until he realized that the more he argued, the more his boss shut down. One day, he simply said, I understand. Let me think about it some more. That sentence wasn't a surrender, but it was gentle enough to open another door. A few days later, his boss actively sought him out to ask for more input. He told me, I realized that withdrawing gracefully doesn't mean staying silent forever, but choosing the right moment to truly be heard. Withdrawing gracefully is the skill of someone who understands the power of rhythm and pause in music. A silence makes a note resonate more. In communication, a pause gives words weight. Sometimes, what you don't say is what others remember the longest. A mature conversationalist doesn't seek to end with victory, but with clarity. They know that a boundary isn't a wall, but a door that only opens when both sides show mutual respect. Choosing battles, saying no, and withdrawing gracefully. These three things may seem small, but they are the beginning of a life of intentional communication. There's a principle I always remind my students: don't say anything just to react, speak to connect. And if, in a given moment, you don't know what to say, silence is still the wisest choice. All communication skills begin with something seemingly simple: confidence. But confidence isn't about speaking loudly or standing in a crowd asserting you're always right. Confidence is the ability to remain at peace within yourself, even when the world around you is noisy. Once a student told me, I want to know how to make others listen to me. I replied, first, you must believe in what you say, because others may not fully understand our words, but they always sense the speaker's energy. Confidence needs no embellishment. It shines through the consistency between your voice and your heart. To gain confidence, you must first learn to talk to yourself. Pay attention to the sentences you repeat in your head. If every day you tell yourself you're useless, you'll speak like someone afraid. But if you practice saying, I'm learning, I'm progressing, your voice will naturally become warmer and more assured. Confident people don't wait for others' approval, they approve of themselves through their actions. Once you have the foundation of confidence, you move to the second art, persuasion. Salmon once said, to persuade, don't talk much, speak clearly. The 5 principles of persuasion I've distilled can be seen as a map. First, grasp the facts. Before opening your mouth, clearly understand what you're saying and who you're speaking to. Facts don't kill emotion, they make it credible. Second, acknowledge. Don't try to deny the other person's viewpoint, just say, I understand why you think that. This acknowledgement makes the other person lower their guard. Third, propose instead of rebut. Put a solution on the table, say, what if we tried this? Instead of you're wrong. Fourth, invite to try. People are rarely persuaded by logic but easily won over by experience. Invite them to try, don't force them to believe. Fifth, reconnect. If they decline, don't retreat bitterly. Just say, thank you for listening. If you ever want to try again later, I still exist. Persuasion isn't about winning, it's about keeping the door open. I once worked with a sales team. They complained that customers were cold and difficult to approach. I asked them, "Are you selling products or selling emotions?" They laughed. A few weeks later, one person messaged me, "I tried starting with, 'I understand why you're hesitant,' instead of 'I guarantee you'll like it.'" And for the first time, the customer listened to everything I had to say. Persuasion isn't about adding more words, it's about reducing pressure. And then there are times when, no matter how skillfully you speak, others still choose rudeness. That's when we enter the most difficult part of communication: escaping bullies. Bullies don't just exist on school playgrounds, they are present in offices, in relationships, even within families. They don't need to shout. Sometimes, all it takes is a glance that makes others feel small. What they seek is control, and what you need is self-possession. I once spoke with a woman who had lived for years in a manipulative environment. She said, "I don't know how to react correctly because the more I react, the harder they attack." I told her, "Then don't react, declare." A declaration isn't an argument, it's a calm assertion. I do not accept being spoken to in that manner. Boundary language doesn't need to be heavy-handed, but it is a fence that protects dignity. If you remain silent out of fear, you've handed your power to others. But if you speak with a calm, clear voice, you reclaim your position. Remember, calmness is what disorients a bully. They need a reaction to gain power. When you don't react, their power dissipates. Once, a young employee was yelled at by her boss in front of colleagues. Instead of bowing her head, she simply said, "I will continue when you are ready to speak respectfully." And then she left the room. The next day, the boss apologized not because she fought back, but because she chose to leave with dignity. Escaping a bully isn't about leaving life, it's about leaving the role of victim. When you stop trying to please others, you begin to live authentically. All these things: confidence, persuasion, and confronting bullies revolve around a single axis: the power of self-control. Self-control isn't about controlling others, but about controlling your own reactions. And once you've learned that, you'll discover a beautiful paradox. The less you need to prove yourself, the more others will trust you. People often say wisdom is knowing, and compassion is understanding. But between knowing and understanding lies a delicate gap, one that sometimes takes a lifetime to cross. Giving others a chance to start anew is the bridge between understanding and forgiveness. We have all made mistakes, spoken hurtful words, acted impulsively. But the painful truth is that the world often remembers errors forever, rarely offering anyone a fresh start. If you have ever been forgiven by someone, you know how light your heart becomes. And if you have truly forgiven someone, you understand it's not a gift for the other person, but for yourself. I once met a father who hadn't spoken to his son for many years. When I asked, he simply said, "He disappointed me." I asked again, "And from then on, you chose silence, right?" He nodded, then sighed. "But now I miss him." I said, "Then call him." He hesitated, "But I don't know what to say." I replied, "Just tell him you miss him." A week later, he messaged me, "I did it." He said he missed me too. Sometimes, the chance to start over begins with a short call. No need for justification, just a sincere sentence. When you give others a chance to start anew, you are opening a door for yourself. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it stops the past from continuing to hurt the present. From there, we move to a deeper virtue: emotional self-management. Today's world teaches us to react quickly, but rarely teaches us to pause. Yet that pause is precisely where character is forged. You cannot control others, but you can choose how you react. Frankel, a concentration camp survivor, wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Salmon takes this spirit to say that when you master your emotions, you master your destiny. Emotional self-management means not letting your mood dictate your actions. I recall once, during a lecture, someone in the audience suddenly stood up and criticized vehemently. I could have reacted, defended myself, but instead I simply looked at him and said, "Thank you for speaking your truth. If you're willing, we can talk privately after this session." The entire hall fell silent. The man sat down, and after the event, he came to shake my hand. When you don't retaliate, you make others reflect on themselves. Emotional self-management doesn't mean repression, it's redirection. Instead of asking, "Why are they like that?" ask, "What can I do better?" Instead of blaming, transform that energy. Anger is a fire. If used wisely, it warms; if not, it consumes. And for that fire to illuminate instead of incinerate, we need to learn the final lesson: maintain a positive outlook, live with kindness. Positivity isn't about faking cheerfulness. It's about clearly seeing the darkness but still choosing to walk towards the light. Positive people aren't naive. They simply believe that good things still matter, no matter how small. I once asked a woman who had been a nurse for 30 years, "How do you maintain your compassion when you see so much suffering?" She said, "Every time I clean someone's wound, I think, this is my way of saying I see you, and then I feel enough." Kindness needs no promises, just action. Maintaining a positive outlook isn't escaping reality, it's choosing a perspective that allows us to act without being paralyzed. When someone is rude, we can think, "This person is awful," or "This person is hurting." The latter thought not only calms us, but also saves the other person from judgment. The way we see the world determines how the world treats us in return. In the end, we realize that everything this book discusses, from listening, understanding, choosing battles, to forgiving, all boils down to one thing: speaking kindly is living kindly. Words are not just sounds, they are footprints of the soul. The one who knows how to choose their words does so not to please anyone, but to preserve the purity within themselves. The one who knows when to be silent does so not out of fear, but out of understanding. Not everything needs a voice to be heard. And when you step out into the world amidst so many hurried voices, if you can still speak slowly, speak truthfully, speak with compassion, you have brought verbal martial arts into life itself. From then on, it is no longer a skill, but a disposition. Because ultimately, power lies not in sharp retorts, but in words that make others feel seen, understood, and touched. That is the ultimate human power. Every life has a moment when we wish we had spoken differently, a softer phrase, a slower word, or simply a sufficient pause. Tong Uy Phu makes us realize that language is not just for communication, but for building worlds. A single sentence can open trust or close the door to a karmic connection. The deepest lesson I learned from this journey is that speaking skillfully isn't about choosing words, but about choosing your heart. If there is still violence in your heart, words, no matter how eloquent, will still hurt. If there is goodwill in your heart, even clumsy words will reach others. Salmon doesn't teach us to be good speakers, he teaches us to be conscious beings through every word we utter. Because speaking isn't a random act, it is the trace of the soul. Try pausing for a moment and ask yourself, have you ever silenced someone just because you wanted to be right? Have you ever said, "I'm just telling the truth," when in reality you were venting anger? Do you remember the last time you spoke a kind word to someone, not because they deserved it, but simply because you wanted to keep them whole in your heart? Language is our mirror. Every time we speak, we are carving out our own image. We cannot choose how others treat us, but we can choose how we react. And in that choice, character is formed. I think if everyone who reads this book remembers only one thing, it should be this: don't speak to win, speak to understand. This world doesn't need more linguistic heroes, it needs people who know how to listen to each other amidst anger. From here, the real question for you isn't how to speak more eloquently, but what you want your words to leave behind for others. Peace or hurt. Hope or fear, connection or rupture, everything begins with a single sentence. Try looking back at today. Was there someone whose story you didn't fully hear? Is there someone you want to apologize to, but you're still waiting for the right moment? Is there someone you need to say, "I understand," to before it's too late? Sometimes, a kind word spoken at the right time can save a relationship, even a life. And sometimes, silence in the right place is the greatest gift we can give. Verbal martial arts doesn't teach us to fight, but to pause. It doesn't teach us to win, but to understand deeply. If you find this world increasingly noisy, don't try to speak louder. Speak more truthfully, because amidst the clamor, people only remember voices that carry sincerity. And who knows, perhaps from you, the one quietly learning to speak from the heart, this world will become a little calmer, a little kinder, and a little more trustworthy. So, if tomorrow you could choose just one sentence to say to someone, which sentence would you choose to make them feel more understood, seen, and loved than today? Wow,